like a smartphone, a person, a car. They are all object in real world. So converting that into programming is what we call object-oriented programming. In this video, we're going to learn how to create an object inside a Python program. In our previous video, in one of my video, I explained what is object-oriented and show you all the concept of object-oriented. So if you understand object-oriented programming very well, you're going to see that object-oriented is all about taking a real-world object and convert it into code, like a smartphone, a person, a car. They are all object in real world. So converting that into programming is what we call object-oriented programming. And when you convert it into programming, you're going to work with it, whether to store it as a record in a database, or you're going to create a simulation of that thing. So this is what we call object-oriented programming, orienting object real world into programming. So in today's video, we're going to orient a student object into programming, and we're going to work with it. So as you can see in Python programming, if you're going to start creating an object, you're going to start by defining the architecture of that object. That's what we call a class. Before you build a house, you need to have an architecture. Then the builder of the house will use the architecture and create the house. So it's the same thing in Python programming. Before we create an object, we need to create a class of that object, which is telling the program this is how the object should look like. So we're going to say class. Then this class is a keyword. The moment you write it, Python already know what class means. That means you are going to create an blueprint of an object. Then you're going to put the name of your object, which in my case I'm going to say student, then colon, and that's it. We create a class of a student. But we need to tell Python program, okay, this object, it has to do this and that and that. So let me start creating. So I forget to mention that every object has two things. We have something what we call attribute, which is that describe the object. For example, if you look at a person, some people are black, some people are white, some people are brown, and then some people has more hair, some people are bald. So what you see in a person or a car that you can use to describe that car is what we call the attribute or the property of that object. So in object-oriented programming, every object that you create, you must have these two things: the attribute and the method, or we say the action it takes. If we look at a person example, we can say, okay, this person, his name was Musa, and then he's a black, he has a very long hair, he loved to wear a white cloth. And then Musa has to do some action, which is what we call a method. So we can say Musa Bytes. Musa, he's very good at Bytes. Musa, he's doing this, Musa is doing this. So whatever Musa is doing, Python, working, is what we call the method of that object, like the physical action you take. So in object-oriented programming, you're going to have attribute and also method of the object. So in Python programming, how do we create the attribute of a object? So this is our student class. So we're going to define it as attribute. When we're going to say define, so when you say define, then you put double underscore in it. You put in it and then double underscore. Then you put self. This self means the object that you are creating. Then comma. So what are the attributes I'm going to take from the student? Let me see, maybe I want his name. That means whenever we are creating the object, we're going to put his name and his age. So that means the moment I created the object, this function is going to run automatically. The moment I create an object, this function is going to run automatically by itself. So when it runs by itself, it's going to assign all the attribute that I want to assign to that object. So I ask that whenever you are creating the student object, you need to pass these two attribute, name and its age. So then I'm going to say whenever we call the object and we say the object dot name, what do we want it to look like, or what do you want it to return? We want it to return the name that he passed when it's creating the object. So I'm going to say self. Like I told you, this self represent the object dot name. So whenever you say the object dot name, then it's going to call this. So when it's called this, what do you want it to see? You're going to want it to see whatever you put when creating the object. And then when it's called self dot age, then what do you want it to see? You want it to see the age that you put when creating the object. So let me stop there and show you what I meant. So this is our object. We're going to say let's write it here. Student object is equal to the student class. So like I told you, the moment you create this student, you need to pass these two things, the name and age. This is the meaning of this init, because if I don't pass it, when I run my code, this function is going to call itself automatically, and then you're going to see that we did not pass anything here, then it will throw an error. So now, since we call the class, try to create the instance of the class, so we need to pass these two things immediately after we created the object. So then we're going to pass like Musa comma is 23. So now we created the object, and this Musa that's when going to be replaced by this name. And then whenever we call student object, this student object, this is what it is, self. This self represents this student object. So when I say student object dot name, like I put here dot name, then I'm going to see this Musa, because this Musa is what this name is, and then we store it also here. So let me show you what I meant. If I say student object, that means this object. Then I said dot name. So as you can see, this student object dot name is the same thing with this in my code, self dot name. So since I already specified that whenever you call the object dot name, then I want it to show this name. What is this name? Is what we put when we creating the object, which is Musa. So let me print this and see. Then by running it, I'm going to see Musa. You see, this is my output. I see Musa. And also if I said that age, guess what I'm going to see? I'm going to see 23. And also if I add another thing, for example, self dot color, let's say by default color is black, and then we're going to say self dot is tall, then we're going to pass all through. Yes, it's a tall. So now I did not ask a user when creating the object to pass whether it is color and whether it is tall or no, but I already pass it through the object automatically. So if I call them here, when I say the object and then dot color or dot install, is going to show me what I store here. I just want you to understand that this name is stored here and this age is stored here, so that you understand how when you call your object, the attribute, and why is that returning this thing. So if I set self object dot color, student object is this self, and then dot color, that means this is equal to black, then we're going to see black. You see black. So I hope you understand attribute. So this is what we call attribute. This attribute is what describe our object. What is the name of our object? Musa. What is the age of our object? 23. And also I can create another object. I can say student object 2 is equal to the student class, which is means they're all going to use the same architecture when creating. Then in this case we're going to say Isa, comma 27. I can also create another object, student object 3 is equal to student. Then the name I will put Fatima, comma 26. So as you can see here, I have how many objects? So based on the object I call, for example, like student2 object, and I say student2 object dot name, we're going to see what? Isa. When I say student object 3 dot name, we're going to see what? Fatima. So this is the attribute of the object, but this one, able object, is going to have this because I did not let the user when creating the object to pass it. But all of the object, they're going to have black and install equals to true. Let me call another object just to see what I meant. So now we see student object 2 and then student object 3. So but I call their color and I print it. If you run this program, you're going to see black, black, black. See, nothing changed. But if you call their names, they're all going to change. Now if I run it, we're going to see every object has its own name. You see, Musa, Isa, Fatima. So this is how you're going to create attribute on an object. So let's move on to see how are we going to create the method of an object. So creating a method is very simple. It's just creating a function inside the object. You can see here this is a function, and this function we call it Dunda method. Or we say yes, Dunda method, which is mean double underscore method, and it is used to create an attribute to your object. So and this program, like I told you, this method is run automatically the moment I created this. It's going to run automatically. I can even print it to see. Say print self. Let me take it down there. Yes, leave it like this. So you see, let me remove this print. And now if I run this program, I'm going to see this print function. You see, I did not print anything outside and I did not call this method. But if I run this program, this method, like I told you, is going to run automatically. So it's going to run automatically for this object, run automatically for this one, and run automatically for this one, because of this is how it works. Dunda method, init method. So you see, it runs automatically. This is representing the object inside the memory. This represents the student object, and this represents student object 2, and this represents student object 3, because I put this print cell. So I hope you understand. So now let's see how we're going to create a method. So we're going to have a method, for example, a method called .get details, like method class and so on. So you're just going to say define get, and we say details. So when we call this method, we want it to return the details of a student. So whenever you're creating a method, you have to put that self first. Then if you want to add an parameter, then you can put, but this one you must put it by default. The reason why you are putting it is like you are telling the object, okay, this method is for this object, so you are passing the object inside the method. Then we can say, okay, whenever we call this method, we want it to return his name and his age at the same time. So we're going to say return then name going to say return self dot name and self dot h. So this is a method and this is an attribute. So method is just like taking an action. So if it is in real life, saying get details is just like I'm asking a student, okay, give me your detail. Then you say my name is so and I am so years old. So now let's call the object. Let me say student object and say dot get details. So since it is a method, not an attribute, we are not going to put open and close parentheses, but since it is a method, we have to put open and close parentheses. So I say now student object dot get details and I put open and close parentheses, just like how you call function. So now to see the output, let's print it. Now we're going to say print then student dot get details. So now you see, okay, having an error, okay, it's my bad. So let's run it again. So you see it's showing Musa 23. If I change it to object 2, then we're going to see Isa 27. So you see, this is how you create an object. This is how you assign attribute to that object, and this is how you create a method. So I'm going to put this code inside the description. You can go and play with it and also add another things. And if you have any question, you can ask in the comment section below. And there is something I want to tell you. This is just the beginning of object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is way more complicated than just assigning attribute to an object and method and that's all. No, it is way more than that. There is a lot of things you need to put that will make that object very accessible.